Okay, are my ladies on? Elise and Missy, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, both of you are here. It is 6 o'clock. We are going to, well, 6 o'clock Central Time. I don't know what time it is where you're at. Anyway, thanks for coming tonight. I have the honor and privilege of presenting or hosting this event with Elise and Missy. They are two individuals that are advocates for science of reading that have really gone above and beyond the call of duty and have developed some really great strategies for advocating. And so I just thought this would be a really cool idea to have advocates share their knowledge and their expertise of what it is to advocate and how to do it. So I'm going to start with Missy and talk about her bio. She is the co-founder of Gwinnett Advocates for Dyslexia, a grassroots organization that advocates for evidence-based instruction in Gwinnett County. I believe that's in Georgia. Additionally, she serves as the education chair with Decoding Dyslexia Georgia, which advocates for change at the state level. Missy holds a BA in middle school education with 10 years of experience in the classroom, grades 4 through 8. Missy is married to Mark, the mother of 3 boys, Harry and William and Matthew, and 1 fur baby named Comet. When she's not working or advocating, she can be found with coffee in hand at the tennis courts or in the baseball fields cheering on her boys. She also is driving a lot. That's what she meant yesterday in the car, and she multitasks. It's not a good drive. That's our little secret.
I'm like a taxi service.
Yeah, that's true.
My other job.
Moms are.
Yeah.
Elise Lovejoy, I love her name, is the founder and CEO of Express Readers Incorporated, a company of teachers based out of Pasadena, California, that has provided a TK through 2nd grade foundational skills and reading program since 2014. Elise holds a BA and an MA in elementary education with 15 years of experience in the classroom, grades K through 2nd grade. Currently, she works with teachers across the country through professional development and program implementation to promote and apply practices based on the immense body of research on how students learn to read. Elise is also a mom of 2 learners and an advocate in her local school district. She often helps other parents and teachers advocate in their districts and has hopes of being involved with larger advocacy endeavors at the state level. And don't stop at the state level, my dear.
No, but we got to take California first.
That may take a while. So it is a pleasure and honor to present these 2 ladies to you tonight. Thank you for being here. And without further ado, Elise and Missy.
Well, we're really excited. Missy and I talked for 2 hours yesterday about this. And I just wanted to start by saying that my brilliant mother-in-law, Patty, once told me, because I have a special needs son, that you learn the most in the parking lot. And this is kind of like the parking lot. I feel like that about Donna's group. You know, you're with people that have the same goal, that care about the same people, and you end up learning from them. And so what Missy and I talked about was that how scared we both were at the beginning, how frightening it was, and how lonely it felt, and how much we had to learn in the sink or swim manner. And so hopefully this will give us a little bit of a help. We can help you have a little bit of an edge.
Mm.
All right. Let's see. Here's the first one. So there are lots of ways that you can advocate, and this does not negate the fact that you probably are already advocating in lots of little ways throughout the day. I mean, I think advocating in a child's IEP, whether you're the parent or a teacher and you're helping with small things, the nuances, that's small scale advocating, but super important. Or whether you're bringing something new into your classroom, even though maybe that isn't, you know, I don't know. I don't want to promote it, but at the same time, it's what's happening right now, that if you know evidence-based is needed for children, and that's not happening in your district. Or if you're just the parent who's at home, who has the patience and takes care of the mental well-being of a child, you are advocating for them and who they are by sitting through the frustration and the meltdowns. But then there are lots of other ways that you can do it. So writing, and this is the first thing I did, and but just writing to district leaders, to principals, to whoever is involved with your child or your classroom, and we will touch on specific needs of if you are a classroom teacher and the kind of how to go about it in a way that isn't offensive or put somebody on the defense. So, but then having meetings, so taking meetings with anyone you can, superintendent, even just educating. Have you read this article? I sent things. Missy, will you talk about your emails?
Yeah. So I started with writing too. It's kind of like throwing darts in the dark. She mentioned that we were just like trying to get something to stick. So I was reading all these articles. I was growing and educating myself. And I thought they've got to hear this. Like if they hear it, they'll get just as excited as me. So I started writing these emails to the Board of Education and just copying the superintendent and all the levels of leadership along with that, and like the curriculum director and the superintendent of instruction. And we have a lot of leaders in our county, so multiple levels. So as anyone that I had kind of gotten to know or that I knew mattered, and I would just do this Monday musings with Missy. I got cutesy with it, and I would just send these emails and say, hey, I'm not sure if you noticed, but Arkansas just did this. Did you notice they passed this bill? And did you notice this state just did this? And I was really championing districts and states that were really winning, and then they were taking steps toward evidence-based instruction. Our county's huge, so I knew they liked to be in the limelight. So my efforts there were trying to get them to see that we were not in the limelight. Like, look at everyone around us making changes, and we're still stuck like in 2 decades in the past.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you're saying too, like writing the emails, one of the really important parts is your responses when they email back. So, we have it all in writing. If somebody emails you back, I fact check. I look at who are the people they put in it. Where did the article come from? My specific district sent me back a blog post by someone from the Teachers College. And I can't remember what the other one was, but I mean, absolutely just no backing. And so I immediately said that this, I see that these articles are from here. I was trying to, do it nicely, but these are the articles I have for you from the National Reading Panel and the Journal of Literacy. And let me give you these sources. And so that those responses are important too.
Yes. Yes.
Missy and I will talk about board speaking. We'll come back to that. That is definitely like one of the things I always say is that you have to start with where you're comfortable. So sometimes you have to have little successes. This is not an easy thing, whether you do it quietly, whether you do the letter writing, whether you go and speak at a meeting. It can feel isolating, and it can be really frightening. And so Missy and I will talk about the board.
Yes. But you can do meetings along the way too. Like, I'll just interject really quick. I just started watching our board meetings. That was not a common practice I had. So what are they talking about? And I just stumbled upon one where they were talking about literacy. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and they were giving a rundown of all of our literacy like tools or toolbox. And it was all like F&P, LLI, reading recovery. And then in the corner, there was this little thing about Orton Gillingham. And my child has dyslexia. And I was like, well, that's weird because my child doesn't have access to that. I'm going to find out why, So I sent a nice little email. Unbeknownst to me, several other moms did. And this county leader, who's the instructional superintendent, put us all in a Zoom call, and we didn't know each other. We started private messaging each other. And that was actually the beginning of Gwinnett Advocates for Dyslexia. Those moms, we were like, we're not alone. And so that happened, stance meeting that just was actually to that poor, district leaders, probably regret later. It's really what fueled our group and got us started with advocacy. So even that little, like just watching a meeting, writing an email, it led to another just chance encounter, which led to something bigger.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I had a conversation with a woman next to me, and she ended up being pretty high up in our AAPC, or African American Parent Council. And she immediately said, oh, let's have a conversation about this. And she gave me some great routes to go. So even though we had totally different stories, it was just, you learn so much from being in those meetings and from listening.
Yes.
Then there's the larger scale, and the see something, say something. This has with evidence and respect. So not being someone that goes on the offense and says, oh, you've done this wrong on your website, or this presentation in your conference isn't great, or whatever have you like that, but actually using the evidence and the articles, and obviously in the group, there's so many that are given, and in the files or the guides that Donna has, there's so much information there. I had a friend, Jen, who was going to a conference and was very excited about it, told me that I should go too, and then immediately wrote me back and said, you can't go, because there's an entire paragraph, talks about the science of reading, and then there's an entire paragraph that said, this is the latest swing in the pendulum. And she wrote this beautiful letter, completely respectful, so many citations in it, even talking about the laws that were in her state. And I just think that's a very eloquent and powerful way to let somebody know that, something needs to change. And then the writing. So we had talked, Donna and I had talked for a long time about writing our institutions, writing the teacher prep institutions. I know a lot of teachers have done that. And again, I say with respect, because we get things done when we can find the way to talk to somebody on their level. So whether it's saying, I had a nice experience here, here, and here, I'd really love to see that your teachers are trained this way. Or writing to your representatives. We are in many states pushing for legislation, not necessarily to put a hold on teachers, because we want teachers to have autonomy in their classrooms, but we want to remove these harmful practices, and we want to ensure that our kids are taken care of and that their rights are met. And then coalitions and nonprofits. I'm sure you know some in your state, but finding those ones and saying, how can I help? Do you have a volunteer? What can I do? Like the Reading League is coming to California. I'm super excited about that. Or, you just find a local one. Today, I went to the Oakland Literacy for All, and I said, my company would really like to support, like give money, because in our state, we need more like you. How do we do that? So something like that.
Yeah, I definitely got connected to tons of, because my child had dyslexia, getting connected to just local and state level groups, and even national groups that really became fueled me to advocate. So many of them were I learned were mountains and years ahead, they had been advocating for a long time, and they were coaching me through what I needed to do in my little world to make change. So they were super helpful. And the old saying, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. It's so true. And I'm from the South, maybe that's a Southern thing, but you do. And so when you write these letters and you're respectful, you kind of command the respect of them. They see you as someone to be listened to, and aligning yourself sometimes with groups is helpful. I just started writing, Missy Purcell, one of Advocates for Dyslexia, on every one of my emails. And so in some way that communicated to them that I was with a group. They didn't know in the beginning that group was 10 moms. That group grew, but in the beginning it was really small. They didn't know that, but because it was a group and we looked organized, we had a lot of respect. And that actually led to, even when they began to make changes, them pulling us in first and meeting with us to tell us the plan before they even told the whole district. So that was the level of respect that we had earned with them just from working with them one-on-one, and valuing what they could bring to the table too in their trusted positions.
That's a great point about aligning yourself to valuable quality groups. The where do I begin? A lot of this is, somewhat simple, easy to look to, but just researching the data, asking for data. So asking your curriculum coordinators if it's not someplace public, because although it should be, a lot of the time it isn't. In California, we have the LCAP though, that makes it easier. They have to publish different subgroups. That's the other piece, is making sure that you ask for data, not just on the they will choose groups. I don't want to make it sound like everybody's the enemy, but they will choose groups sometimes to show, and then there isn't. I had a I apologize. Sorry. I just lost my train of thought. I had a principal tell me once, well, we actually have great scores. You just kind of have to ignore because we have 31% special needs. Well, they don't have an SDC class. So these are gen ed kids who have an IEP. To me, that means that they should be, if they're not meeting their, then the job isn't being done. Include that in your data. So I always make sure now I ask, does it have all subpopulations and categories within? Asking questions. So even just asking, like if you're a parent too, asking the teacher, what do we use? What kind of curriculum is there? How are my kids assessed? Missy, do you have anything on this one? It was a
Yeah. I mean, the word is disaggregated data. And I only know that because I've been sitting on this literacy council for a hot minute, and we are looking at it. It's so critical because I live in a county where it looks like we're doing well. Like 70 to 80, depending on the school, 70 to 80% kids are proficient. But when you start breaking it down, our Black and our brown and our groups, our kids that might receive special education services are often somewhere in the, like 30, special education at my local school, only 15% of the kids were proficient at reading. And so, and the bulk of those kids were being served in SLD, so a specific learning disability, which means they have the ability to be able to learn to read. We know that 95% can. So they're just not being taught in a way that they can learn. So taking those numbers, their own data that they post on their websites and on the state level is excellent because it's their data. So you're speaking their language, and it's hard to turn away from that. It's also hard for board members to ignore those numbers because they get information from the district that seems contradictory. And it is because they're getting the big group number and not the broken down and seeing where we're failing kids. And so that's huge. And if you don't know how to do that, I didn't know how to do that in the beginning. There's a girl on our team that she is like always behind the scenes, and she can find anything that's data. So find you a person like her, and she just goes to town and she finds it. And now I know how to find the reports, but I had to ask her like over and over to help me. And now I know.
But you have every right to ask for that. That's the point, is that you can ask those questions. And you're right. And we will talk about it too, but those data points are huge. They're very powerful. Who should I speak to? These are the normal ones. These are that, if you can get meetings with these people, and again, respectful, but giving information, telling your story is powerful. It truly is, but also just giving information, because facts are harder to ignore. Yes. Especially when and I don't know about the rest of you, but I get a lot of the time like, oh, it's an angry mom, or she's, it's one of those moms. And I think, it's not quite right, but
we don't look like those moms. We don't.
I'm proud to be one of those moms, by the way.
Me too. Actually, the first time I clicked the first email, I knew I had kind of drawn. I told you I drew that line in the sand, and I was like, I'm that mom now, and I'm proud of it because at the end of the day, there were like my own personal kid needed me to be that mom. Yeah. But also, I found some amazing teachers like me that needed someone to start this conversation so they could find a way to join, or who may have already been starting conversations in their own little ways across our district, who were like so excited that there was something was like moving and shaking and they could kind of step into. So, and they weren't alone anymore. So that's huge. I'll add one thing here too. I think it's a common courtesy to start at your local level. And if you're having these conversations, to email your local schools first. I didn't get any tread marks that way. That didn't work for me. I got a lot of, oh, thanks for the article. I might not ever read that, but I didn't get anywhere. So I did start moving up the ranks, and we do have levels of leadership. So if you're in the system, you probably can find that easier. It's hidden on the public side for me, but I have so many friends still in the system. They help me find the chain of command. And so I was able to email all those people. And I just started going higher and higher until I eventually was in the superintendent, So, but I just thought it was nice to give my local level this opportunity to respond. And if they didn't, next.
I think you're definitely right when you're a teacher or an educator in those districts. I I made a very big point though of saying, this is not on my principal and this is not on my school. My teachers love my child and the school loves my child, but there's a mandate coming from the top that states these are the programs you can use. This is how we're going to do our PD. So there is that place too, I think, as a mom, because you can. I went directly there and I said, wow, we really love our school, but
Yeah.
this is going wrong and we need to see a change, and here are the scores. We'll get there, right? But the other thing that you had said, and I want to make sure to say it, is a lot of the times in these situations, you'll bump into journalists.
Yeah.
And it's super important, if you can, to educate in an effective way, because the more public we are with all of this, I mean, we've all seen it, sold the story, didn't it, throw a lot of this into the limelight, that by being louder, it helps.
Yes. Yes.
Missy, you made the best point about this yesterday when we were talking about it. I didn't know what the school board did. And yes, I was a teacher for gosh, how long, but I never really understood it until I started speaking there, that a lot of the times these are high school teachers or professionals in other areas. It can also be a stepping stone to other political positions. But the biggest thing that Missy had said yesterday was educate them. I had board members come to me and say, can you explain to me what you're talking about? And that is so powerful, because then you get people who are in on the kind of asking questions of their administration. Why did we make that decision? Where's the data? What kind of data is it? Does it include, all the, like we said, all the different groups? What's the evidence behind that program? And I gave that to a couple of my board members, and I would hear them ask it, in the meetings, because they just didn't know. It's not like all of these people who you watch getting yelled at board meetings are on the hunt to hurt a child. A lot of them want to help. They just don't know this information. And the thing I'll say about that too, how long did a lot of us teach before we knew? So think about that. These people aren't even in the classroom or in our schools necessarily. And
yeah, we spent a lot of time doing this. The little first group of us when we were super small, and we made a folder and it had our dyslexia handbook, because it was no one seemed to know it existed, even though it was to be implemented in like a year. So we printed a copy of that. We may have, well, I probably shouldn't say that part. We had somebody help us print it inside the school system.
Right.
But we made copies of the handbook. We made copies of like what is structured literacy versus balanced literacy. There's some great graphics out there, and just we educated them on the terms, like what is the science of reading and what is the data behind this, how many, like the statistics about how many kids can learn to read, what are our own statistics. We put it all in there. So when we began to talk to them, we would reference things. We would say in your folder. And every time we would speak, we would come with new things to add to that, so that so we were kind of building their knowledge and giving them just a common understanding. And then my favorite thing that we did is this part here about requiring accountability for administration. That's powerful. Like that is probably the most powerful tool we have. They can't get involved in district, local, day-to-day operations. That is against board policy, but they can hold district leaders accountable, especially like my board hires our superintendent. And so they can hold them accountable. So when you're not getting the traction you need with your district leaders, because they're not responding to your emails and they're kind of ghosting you, then you loop in your board member or the whole board. We have one email that has them all, but also have individual emails. Loop them in, and they can be like, hey, I'm going to see if so-and-so superintendent will respond to you tomorrow. And they'll copy the superintendent. So there's accountability there for responding and giving the data that we've asked for and making those headway. So that is huge. And I didn't realize that. And they also, I told my board members, like, hey, I want you to be the person, like every time we have a work meeting, that ask about the science of reading, or that ask about the dyslexia initiative. I want you to be that person. And so we became such good friends that they would text me in these meetings and say, they're talking about this intervention. What do you think? And I would give her talking points and questions to ask. So like, they can be powerful advocates with you. You can be like the, you know, the man behind the curtain, and, you know, fueling some of their own change, especially when you just become their friend and you realize, you know, sometimes when you start talking to people, you realize, oh, they have a family member that has the same struggle that we're fighting for. And then you have an immediate friend. So befriend those people, keep going. In fact, my own board member didn't respond to me, but my 2 others did. So we're still friends, and I'm still trying to befriend my own. They help me. They're the biggest advocates. So don't give up on all of them. They're great.
I didn't mean to Oscar you there where I was like, Journey. That was not the intention. Flip of the finger. So where do I find the scores or data for my district? This obviously, it just depends on what state you're in, what district you're in. And again, ask, because that should be available. And a lot of the time it isn't, but make sure you're asking for all the different groups. In my specific district, 78% of white kids can read, but 34% of Hispanic kids and 34% of African-American kids can read proficiently by 4th grade. And that, I mean, then alone, if we're right under 50%, they say, oh, we're about the state. Well,
Yeah.
you gotta look at those ones, right? I'm sorry, I was gonna move through that one quick because we kind of covered it, but if I work for a district or school, any specific tips? So I'll give mine really quick, because it is a different case. As a parent, you have a lot of power, and they can't fire you. So that's an easier piece right there. As a teacher, as an educator, that's actually not a bad way to go. I had teachers calling me left and right once I started speaking, because they were saying, this is how I feel. This is what's happening. Don't use my name, but you know, but finding a parent who is an effective advocate, or somebody that people are looking to with information is really powerful. Also, asking questions, but in a way that doesn't put people on the defense. So asking questions, not with your answer immediately, but to kind of like try to figure out the information. Why did they get there? Why are we doing this PD? What is it about it? And what's the evidence or the research behind it? Why did we choose it? Who's giving it? What's the pilot about? Those kind of questions. Also, writing things down before you go talk to somebody. Try it out, say it out loud so that you hear your own tone and you understand if you're being, because you might not mean to be, but it's such a passionate topic, especially if you have been feeling belittled or lonely or whatever, and we're talking about children. And so sometimes we can get so emotional inside ourselves that when you're talking about it, you can sound angry. And there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're talking as a teacher.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard. There's a fine line between passion and anger. Totally. I have a couple good teacher friends in the county, and one of them actually came to speak at the board. She was a former teacher of the year, so I think that gave her a little bit of a pedestal to be able to speak. So she met with a bunch of teachers and took their collective thoughts and turned it into a speech to represent a group of them, which I thought was powerful because of where she stood in the county. But then I have other teacher friends who don't feel comfortable coming to the board. But what I love about them is that they, like a few of them, they just believe in it. I mean, they're kind of going, if you've seen the Right to Read film, like one of them's going off, you know, the chains and doing bookworms, almost like the teacher in there. You know, she's literally trailblazing in this county, which is a kind of a no-no. And but she has these amazing conversations with her teacher friends, her you know, her grade level, and she just asks them where they are right now. What do they think about reading and reading instruction? And she's kind of taking them to their next best step. Mm-hmm. So she's not trying to take them to the end where we want everyone to be eventually. She's just taking them to the next step. So she's advocating within her school. She's doing really small steps, but they're making big changes. And in a year, 3 of those teachers have made so many changes. I just found out they were like co-hosting a Sold a Story podcast conversation for teachers, right? And 2 of them were not on board until, I think she had some conversations with them and they moved in that direction. So you can have power in your school just with those small, you're the positive force, start talking about what's happening in your room, sharing some of the strategies you're doing. I'm not saying you have to start an Instagram page with like 100,000 followers, but you can really influence others just by what you're doing and the way you talk about it. So don't give up hope if you feel kind of like you can't speak at the top levels yet. Talking in the trenches is very effective and where we probably need to have more conversations.
I agree with that 100%. And I met a bunch of teachers back because I've been doing this for 10 years now. And I met a bunch of teachers before I was using the phrase science of reading. So I was just talking about, journals I had read and the research I had found. And this is, what I had done in my class and the scale that I had seen and the improvement. And just by showing what I was doing or talking about the rationale behind it, the teachers that now I'm still friends with and now we're on this course too, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
All right, here it is. If you are going to do it, and I realize that as a teacher, it's a little bit more daunting. I still think you can do it as a teacher, but you have to be very clear that you're not going in angry. Unfortunately, it just, your job is, it's part of it, but you have the right to. And so they can't chastise you for it, but obviously that's not how school systems work under the table. But I'll give you the quick ones. Here are our quick points that Missy knows I was going to say. Find out the rules for speaking. So how many minutes do you have? Do you have to walk up? Do you, whatever the little rules are, where do you have to stand? All those things, because it'll make you feel better if you know exactly what you're going to do. Try to cut out unnecessary words. Missy says, you tell yours in a minute, but I did the first time I said, hello, everybody. And I was all sweet as sugar. And then there was a lot of stuff that happened and I started getting bullied. And people were saying to me, you're wasting your time by saying hello to everybody. So then I would just start walking up and start speaking because they already knew who I was and they knew I was coming. It wasn't that I was being disrespectful, but if they were only going to give me 2 to 3 minutes, I was going to use my time wisely. Practice during the time limit. So I always sit down with a stopwatch and make myself do it a bunch of times. Not only does it help to listen to what you're going to say out loud, because then you find your mistakes or you figure out where you want to put emphasis. You really want to make that point happen. But it also helps keep you in the time limit. And one tip that somebody had told me too was speak through the buzzer. Just say what you got to say, because usually those last couple sentences are the most important and they're not going to cut you off unless you do it all the time. So that's important. And then my last one is that the very first meeting I spoke at, I wore black and I was dressed like a mom, which is how I'm normally dressed. And I was so nervous and I sweat through everything and I shook like a leaf. I just was so nervous. And my husband said, you got to figure out how to find your power in this. So my armor was wearing red and high heels because it made me stand up taller. It made me walk like I was trying not to use an expletive. I'm sorry, Donna. So, made me walk like I was stronger and,
go right ahead.
You have a synonym for that? Can we come up with a synonym?
I know, right?
Strong female.
A bad booty. I don't know. So I would just walk up there, shake it. But it was my armor. So it wasn't like about looking a certain way. It was like, I needed to feel forceful because what I was saying was important. And I needed to remind myself of that. And so whatever you got to do to make yourself get up there. Yeah. That's all.
No, those are awesome. And we actually went, a few of us from our little group went beforehand and just scoped out a meeting because we had never spoken at a board meeting before. So even just being in the space to see what it looks like and see how people are called up and how it operates, that was really helpful for me. And also if you go early to a board meeting, this may just be unique to me. It may be different, but we realized when you went early, the board members are walking around. And there's also some really important people in this space. We began to figure that out. Like there were some House reps, so state level people in the spaces. There were reporters for your local newspapers, even like our county paper, but also our state paper. And so that was really important because we became like little mini politicians. We started talking to people. I mean, and you just have to kind of be a little, bold and walk up and say, hi, I'm Missy. And my armor was with, Gwinnett Advocates for Dyslexia, like we were some, 500 million member organization. And we had t-shirts. The first time we went, we all wore a t-shirt. So there were a bunch of us with t-shirts, this was back in the mask days. So we even had masks that said until every kid can read. And so we showed up and we looked organized. We looked like we had a plan, and we actually were a bit organized. We actually had strategic people in the spaces to speak. And it was almost like, you just kind of get assigned in our district a number to speak, but we all planned our speeches to not talk about the same parts of the conversation. So one of us was really hitting curriculum, one was really hitting interventions, one of us was really hitting identifying kids, so we were hitting different parts. Even like the coolest part for me was that my son had this amazing tutor that had tutored him privately when we were fighting the school system to get help for him. And her child had dyslexia, so she was fully embraced the science of reading. So she was educating me a lot about, the science of education, and obviously teaching my kid using structured literacy. And we loved her. And she had moved to Tennessee, but came back to speak at the board meeting as a former teacher and parent of a child who had been failed by the system's policies and their procedures. And so the power of like her and other parents, even a tutor who was really embracing the science of reading, was amazing. And we organized and just gave our speeches, and it was just, that felt empowering. So you're a lot probably braver than me because you went by yourself and just walked in and owned it. I did walk in with a group, and I thought, at least they're behind me cheering me as I the part about practicing, you're going to practice, but let me just tell you, I don't care how great of a speaker you are, you get 3 minutes and you see the time ticking, and you've got all these important things to say. And I wanted it to be personal. I had a picture of my child. We went and got these giant photos of our children, and we held them up. My 1 and 5. This is my 1 and 5. And so to speak in front of them, you feel like you're talking to the principal. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. And there's a timer. And I said, oh my gosh, I sound like I need to go I need some speech classes. I just literally could not get words out. I said recent instead of, research. And then I said persuasive instead of pervasive. I'm stumbling now. It's like my bad word. I can't say it anymore, but you're going to mess up, and the timer is going to make you make you feel kind of nervous, but, keep doing it, because you'll get better and you'll get more relaxed, and more people will join you. If you're the squeaky wheel that keeps showing up, you're going to get the oil. They're going to start paying attention. They don't like bad press.
Yep.
So if you keep
you're bringing us here because the things that are harder to ignore, I'm saying not easily ignored, because it obviously has been, and it does get ignored. But it's budgets. How much are they spending on intervention? What are they spending on pulling kids out of classes to make up for what they're not doing in the classes? I think as a teacher, these are even things you can ask. You maybe not saying it, you're asking about it. I see that our budget for interventions this year is this. Can you explain to me what the breakdown of that is? You're totally allowed to. Okay, it's not great, because I think there is still something confrontational about it, but there are ways to do it. The percentages, again, like we said, knocking it down. So yeah, it's great that we've got 48%, which I still think is horrific. But, in their eyes, well, that's a California percentage. But then when you really look at it, how frightening that is. Local or state lawsuits. This is a big one, because I think, previously won lawsuits hold a precedent. And I'm not a lawyer, but I have never walked into an IEP meeting without having a couple laws under my belt or something from that legal document. Because if you look like you know what you're talking about, you use a couple of things that are important. So for us in California, LAT versus the state of California, $53 million to schools. It was a settlement, but hey, I don't know, civil rights, it's reading, people are starting to listen to that. So I pulled it up in a bunch of my meetings. And that honestly, I think is one of the things that really scared my district into moving. So maybe that's their ticker. And real story. So again, it is so important to tell your own story. I did tell the story of my boys. I don't think I ever mentioned that my son was special needs, but part of me had already accepted that it was too late for him. And that's going to sound awful. Not on my end. I still fight for him and I still work with him and I still get him all the help I can. But he was in kindergarten halfway through by the time I started fighting. And I knew that a year and a half, this big district wasn't going to turn. It's like a cruise ship. But, in that sense, where did I go with that? Sorry, I lost that train of thought. So I didn't talk about my son because I didn't want it to be about him being special needs. Because he's special needs, but he's fully capable. And so I wanted it to be about the kids in our district, all of our children, mine, other people's, they're all ours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's huge. I mean, we did start with dyslexia, but as we begin each of our speeches really hit the nail on the head of the percentages of kids that were being failed outside of that. And also how if we made the switch to this type of instruction and we trained our teachers well and we adopted a new curriculums, that every kid would become better. Our good readers become excellent readers and our struggling readers become proficient readers. And so we kind of showed them that these steps were going to be helpful for every kid in the district. We have a saying too in our district that we're a world-class district. And so I started hitting on that and saying it's not until it's world-class for all, it's not world-class at all. Mm-hmm. And so I took our own motto and turned it around to show them that right now, these are the kids that it's not world-class for. These are the ones we're failing. These are the percentages. Also, we are making the shift to science of reading now in Gwinnett, but we are still holding on to lots of balanced literacy. So our push is to show us that our investment in these resources is are we getting the return on our investment? Which percentages of kids in these interventions are actually becoming proficient readers and does it justify the cost? Or would that money be better spent training more teachers more in depth with where we're headed and moving all in one direction? And so that's been a great talking point as well, because putting it on them to show and having the board members hold them accountable for showing that where they're putting their money is actually yielding good results for our kids.
Missy, what's that saying again?
Until it's world-class for all, it's not world-class at all.
Perfect.
And so, and our district loves to be like the city on the hill, right? They brag about all of our work. We've won the board, award and so many blue ribbon schools. And I mean, we're this and that. And kind of like we're pretty well known in the whole state. And so finding what makes your district tick. So if we talk to them in the way that this will keep us being that city on the hill, finding those talking points speaks to the leaders as well. That's the language they understand. Agreed.
Well, I think you hit on too, using success models. Like you were saying, is this successful? Like showing other places that have been. I know for us, and I've heard Kareem Weaver say this, that Mississippi, it's not a miracle. And so I really harped on the fact of what they did 5 years ago, starting in with training their teachers and really pushing for that piece, but look at what they're doing. So no more complaining about us being a high needs district, because we are a high needs district, just,
yes,
getting it done. I also too, you had mentioned giving information. I wanted to say, the Science of Reading Defining Guide, I bought a stack of those, handed them out to every board member. And I had a couple board members say to me, thank you. That was super informative.
Excellent. That's like perfect. One more quick little thing about
Oh, sorry, yes.
but I go to the state and, work with another group at the state level. And we were just there recently, and I loved this quote. A guy spoke on behalf of a bill that we have going through right now. I'm wearing my little shirt right now, but spoke on a bill for House Bill 538, which is an early literacy bill for Georgia. And he made the comment, he said, what we're asking you to do is not revolutionary. We're asking you to play catch up. Every one of our neighbors has already gone before us. Like, whoa, that's kind of like a slap in the face, right? So if you have anyone around you, states or districts, or schools that are actually really success stories, elevate those. I found a group of schools in Tennessee that are years ahead of us with HQ, with like high quality instructional materials and structured literacy and foundational skills. And like one school was touting they have no kids in tier 3 in 5th grade after 3 years of this implementation. So I shared that with my board, and like, why wouldn't you want that? Like that is amazing. That statistic is amazing. And stories of success and what other states and districts and schools are doing are huge, because you're not just complaining. Now you have a solution. You're giving them a path forward.
That's what I said too. I said, this isn't a complaint. This is a problem that has a solution.
Yes.
So it's not like a mom standing up complaining about it. So what can I expect? Missy and I talked about this the other day, because our experiences were similar and very different. One of the things that happened to me early on is that because I have a company and it's in the reading realm, one of the board members went after me in the public newspaper and said that I was doing it for a financial gain, and that, this, that, and the other thing, just really awful. And I'm somebody who gets anxiety and I had stomach aches about that kind of feeling. It was really horrific. However, the special needs paper trail mom in me had kept everything. And I had immediately written the district, and everybody included, when I started this, and I said, I will not do business with this district. I need you to know that this is pure. This is about our kids, and this is the matter. Keeping a paper trail. So if you work for the district, if you work in reading, whatever it is, back yourself up, because they're going to back themselves up. And there is a bullying thing that happens in some districts, and it can be really ugly. There was a lot that kind of happened to me that made it really hard for me for a while. But I found my allies, just like Missy was saying. I found the teachers that were super supportive. I found the principals who were super supportive, and that made a big difference.
Yeah. I mean,
right. We have a question.
Oh yeah.
From Lauren. I've been wondering about lawsuits. It's my understanding that when legal gets involved, there are often settlements and non-disclosure agreements. How can I find out about lawsuits in my district?
Well, you should be able to, if it was a lawsuit that went all the way to a hearing, it's public knowledge, and it should be posted on your state Board of Education page. You can probably go and look under there.
She's asking about non-disclosure agreements, though.
Those are not going to be posted because they're non-disclosure.
But what about asking? These are the other pieces. We're all connected by social media now. Mm-hmm. We have a website, and I put up some questions. It was with the local school districts. I put up a couple questions. Yes, I had some bad things happen. People come after me, but I also had people find me. So those are the kinds of questions to ask. I realize you can't speak about it, but can we talk about,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there are some things you can speak. I actually am under a non-disclosure act from my county. So, which also speaks to the level of my advocacy. I did have to file a legal route with my district, but at the same time, I'm still friends with them, and I work with them, and we're together in this. And so I think that goes back to like the way you talk to people and the way you handle things. Those were kind of separate experiences. But there are some things that people can talk about. For example, I can't give you the specifics of our agreement, but I can tell you that I did that. And I can tell you that my kid is getting what he needs. And so just can't give specifics. So that's where parents can share stories like that, and giving them safe spaces is excellent, is an excellent way. And they can probably join the route too. Some of them are scared to speak out because they might be under NDA. But usually those are limited and specific to the actual settlements, and not what happened to lead up to that. I wouldn't sign one that did anyway. So that's a little point if you're in that spot. But yeah, they're not. So usually they can chat about some things and still play a part. Their voices matter very much so, because they've walked a really hard road.
Tawny, you have any more for us?
That was it.
No, all right. Well, I think the most important part, and the thing that Missy and I were so grateful for, is Missy reached out to me after I spoke, and I put it on a public forum like this with Donna, and I immediately started having a village. So Missy and I are scared sometimes. We're upset. I have people say unkind things to me. But the biggest and most important part is that you can find your people. And I know that Missy and I both are people who are welcome being reached out to if somebody needs, anything.
Yes, our DMs are I think are always full.
Slide right in.
Yeah. But it is. I mean, I would say that's the positive thing that you can expect as a community. I did find so many parents and teachers and even administrators reach out to me to say, and even a high level district leader who said, I believe in this. And
nice.
so it was really nice to have a community. It was scary. I will echo what you said. I knew when I started doing this that I was kind of putting myself out there in a way that maybe people didn't know me, and for judgment and even just critiquing yourself with speaking. But to see the response from so many parents, and as people joined us, the momentum of that, and to see where we've come. We've got miles to go, but we've come so many miles.
Mm-hmm.
So you can expect hopefully change, but a giant village of people to support you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to add to that, when you're speaking these people and just advocating, it's really scary at first, but once you do it over time, you become stronger and more proactive. You can't help but do that. And especially when you get, accolades from people and say, oh, this is what I needed to hear. That you're helping others, and that it's almost like our duty to help to do that, because the more we speak out, the message gets out to other people, and then they'll speak out, and it's that drop effect, right? And it just keeps growing and growing. And we, thank you, ladies, for all that work.
Well, and neither one of us did it necessarily on purpose. We did it because we loved our children and we loved other people's kids. And I think that's kind of why all the people are here, which
exactly.
is
Yeah.
So here we go. We are both completely kick A. Fill in the blank. So, so do we have any questions it's not quite an hour. We have 7 minutes left. Any questions from the participants here, the audience?
I see one about how early did you get involved with the bills in your state, and were you invited to into that space? That is a lot easier with an organization. Like that is more through Decoding Dyslexia, Georgia. They're powerhouse women. And I'll tell you, no, you don't have to be invited. You know what you do? You follow your political season. So right now it's political season, and the House meets first, and then the bills go to the Senate. You learn a lot about government that you probably might not have learned very well in school. And you go and you find out when your bill is going to be spoken about in committees, and you make public comment, and then you meet great people who are making public comment, and you realize there's allies there. You also realize there are some adversaries, which is why you're needed in those spaces. But and then you also start talking to your senators, and they're the group that I'm with. Gosh, a lot of them go down and spend all the time just talking. You can find out when your reps are at the ropes. That's like when they're in session, they come out to the ropes. You can call them to the ropes from a page. You can get FaceTime with them. We wore these shirts last week when we were down there, and it was excellent because people knew the bill we were there for, and it started lots of conversations with people that we didn't even we weren't on their radar. So just insert yourself, find out what's going on, what bills are on the table, and get down there and make public comment. It's just like speaking at your board, but it's a board of representatives that you elected, or maybe didn't, but they're all there.
That's right. And you know what? That's their duty to listen to you. It really is. Okay, we got another question. Any trainings you would recommend to learn what to do to advocate on IEP meetings, particularly in dyslexia intervention with fidelity? Particularly to get dyslexia intervention with fidelity.
I think any IEP, I think the biggest thing that you can do is find an advocate for yourself. Either an informed parent in your district, because a lot of us will do it for free. I have done it for other families, and I know Missy has too, or finding an actual advocate, because you are totally legally allowed to have that. They will also help you kind of learn how to navigate. And I don't know dyslexia specific. So
I think Wright's Law has things like that.
Yeah, I would also say find our state has 2 dyslexia Facebook pages that are kind of like the Science of Reading, but it's just all dyslexia parents. And put in there, you got to be careful. I would caution, some of the advocates are not, they're in it for the money, and they're not in it so much for truly helping you. So we have this little group, I call us the Underground Railroad of Dyslexia Advocates, and it's just moms who had someone help them, and then a parent reaches out on these pages and we see it, and then they send a private message, and then somehow we end up in an IEP meeting with a parent. It does just take someone who's informed, who knows your county, knows what you're up against, who the players are, and then you can start making waves.
I saw a question a while ago where somebody said that they emailed district administrators, and they provided articles and research, and they have responded that the balanced literacy curriculum is informed by research and pedagogy. What data or evidence can I provide to respond to that? I think that the very first question that you ask is, can I see that? What's the source? So asking questions to people's assertions is a huge way to catch what's going on. Because I asked immediately of my district, can you tell me the sources that were, and when they sent me the blog post, that was easy. I shot that one out of the water, but
I love that.
Ask them for their scope and cycle, because they don't have one. And
it's
the scope and sequence, they don't have one. Like, they literally, it doesn't exist. So therefore, it's not structured.
There was one woman in one of the comments, and I found out that she'd been arrested and was currently in jail. And so, I just a little Google and sent that back. And I said, I'm not certain that this should be exactly where we're turning to for our evidence for our district. So,
right. Okay. This was excellent. Really, it was really good.
Thank you for doing it. And thank you to everyone that showed up.
Yes.
Really, it feels good.
Yeah.
So now, ladies, just get prepared to have an onslaught of emails and texts, but that's okay. Yes. Thank you very, very much, both of you.
We should say too that we have our documents, Donna.
Yep. Yes. And there's going to be a document I'll be sending out with the recording. And if you registered, you'll get that. And I'll also post it on the Facebook page.
And if you think you can't give a speech to your board, just watch my first speech and you'll know you can do it.
The links are in there. The links are in there, and all of our board speeches. Missy, I don't know how you feel, but I'm totally comfortable if people want to use my words. If you're having trouble writing something, please go ahead. I think I had 7 board speeches in there. So
yeah,
ooh, I love it.
Anything. Yes. Yeah. Insert your district's data, so you can see how they evolve over time too, and how we kept elevating the same things, but really talking about new things. Yeah, you got this.
And you know what? You're within your rights and you just don't have to be obnoxious about it. You can do it peacefully.
Yes.
All right, friends. Good night. Thank you
Thank
very much. Appreciate your work.